Hey out there, it's David Duford at Buy Life Insurance for Burial, where I help people like you find affordable and high quality life insurance and burial insurance. Today's topic is about the ultimate guide to getting life insurance for your parents. And most likely you're here today because you're a child of a parent that you are concerned that needs some kind of life insurance or burial insurance, some type of coverage to take care of final expenses. So you're watching this video to try to get as much information and facts as you can. If that's the case, you're at the right place. So let's get started on how to get final expense and life insurance coverage for your parents. So first I'm going to start off by formally introducing myself to you, as well as my company, as well as really answer the first question you probably have, which is why get life insurance for your parents? There's a lot of different reasons why. Hopefully I'll be able to help clarify those reasons. And again, kind of conjoined with that is who gets life insurance for parents and under what circumstances is it a sensible investment to get. Then we're going to talk about issues with getting life insurance for parents. There are some issues that will come up, for example, such as consent issues, actual pride in the parent, how to overcome some of those concerns, and qualification concerns. Then we're going to ask some questions ahead of time. For example, questions asked ahead of time before qualifying parents for life insurance. So you need to make sure you ask these particular questions to make sure everything is on board and so you can have the smoothest ride possible. Then I'm going to show you actually how to qualify your parent for life insurance, and then leave you with some next steps on how to proceed if you've decided getting life insurance for your parents is a good idea. So my name is David Duford. I'm the owner and founder of BuyLifeInsuranceForBurial.com. I've been licensed as a life insurance agent since 2011. And over the past short period of time I've been in this business, I've helped over 3,000 families with their life insurance needs from all walks of life. In addition to helping people with their insurance, I'm also a published author of 2 books. The one most relevant to this topic at hand is The Official Guide to Buying Final Expense Life Insurance. You can find it on Amazon. It's just a short little booklet on tips and tricks to get good quality life insurance. Also, I am a life insurance agency owner. I actually train life insurance agents like me on how to help people like you in their local communities across the nation. And last but not least, I'm married and have 3 kids with the 4th one on the way at any time now at the filming of this video. So wish us luck. So the main question I want to clarify, getting started, is why buy life insurance for your parents? You may have some reasons as to why you're pursuing this course of action. And what I want to do is validate those reasons, as well as provide you some other reasons, because buying life insurance is you have to have a strong need and a strong understanding of why it's important, because this is, in a sense, not an actual real investment, but it is a commitment of your money over a period of time. So you want to make sure the reasons you purchase life insurance for your parents is very strong and makes perfect sense. So there are several good reasons to buy life insurance for your parents. Probably the most common reason is that your parents are uninsured or underinsured. I got off the phone yesterday with a lady whose mother was 80 years old and her term insurance policy had just lapsed. They had religiously paid on it for years and were told that they could renew it, and it turns out they frankly lied to her, and she lost her coverage. So she was completely uninsured. So she called me to help her find a policy to replace that one that wouldn't cancel. Also, some parents have coverage, but perhaps it's just not enough. Maybe you've talked to your mom or you've talked to your dad and they've got an insurance policy they've had for years, but it only covers for a couple of $1,000s in coverage when a final expense funeral would cost that much, but now it's much more than that. Or perhaps they have a plan that they know is going to terminate, and you feel it's important to have something that won't terminate. So these are good reasons to have coverage. Again, tangential or really related directly to this is that maybe your parents just cannot afford to buy life insurance on their own. Maybe they've looked at buying life insurance, or they've had it and they've had to let it go simply because they're on a fixed income. So many people now in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, retired or disabled, live only on the one check they get a month, and it doesn't go very far. And so making space for a life insurance payment can be difficult for seniors. So if your parents are in that circumstance, this is a great reason why to buy a life insurance policy for them, to pay it for them, but make sure that they are insured when they pass away so that a death benefit will be paid to the beneficiary. Again, maybe your parents, they don't have life insurance and they thought they could save enough money for the burial or final expenses, but life happens and they've had to tap into their resources in order to take care of everyday living circumstances, so they just don't have the money to do it. So for example, I talked to a gentleman in Alabama a couple of years ago, and he retired as a sheriff. He had a good pension, still does, and had a good amount of savings. Unfortunately, his daughter ended up in rehab, and it cost him, as he told me, around $80,000, $90,000 to get her out of rehab several times, to put her into the program, to take care of her son when she was in rehab. And she's doing a lot better now, but he ran way through his savings. And he never would have expected to have done that had I talked to him 10 years prior. So it put him in a financial position where, yeah, he had a good pension, but his living expenses matched his pension. So he didn't have much left over. And he needed a policy to take care of a burial. So if you have a parent like that, where they've run through their savings, or they potentially could, and you're concerned, maybe you don't want them to rely exclusively on savings, and you feel better about having a policy dedicated for life insurance reasons, then that's a good reason to buy a policy, because life happens and we never know what to expect. And built into that, not just burial expenses or the cost to cremate. That's a good reason, of course, to be motivated to buy a policy. But another one is if there's any kind of financial obligations. Financial obligations would be, well, maybe they owe a loan on a car, and you want to make sure that loan is paid so that you can take the car. Or maybe there's a mortgage that your parent has, and it's the intention of the parent and you for you to assume the house when she passes away. Well, maybe you don't want to assume the mortgage that comes with it or have to refinance. Maybe you can't refinance. So a life insurance plan can pay off a policy or pay off a mortgage so that you assume the house free and clear without having to refinance, having to go try to qualify with your credit, or to assume the loan if that's possible even. A life insurance policy can basically indemnify those debts so that they don't pass on to you. So that's a really good reason to owe that as well. And maybe you're just worried about your parents' diminishing health. For example, my mother had cancer of the tongue, of all places, a couple years back. And sometimes when we have health events, health scares, serious scares, it makes us think twice about things that we take for granted. Life insurance is not the thing that we just walk around and think about all day. Usually it's precipitated by some sort of life event, a death, a serious health event. So if that's happened, it's a good impetus to begin looking for a policy to buy in your parents so that you can at least just put some protection and give you some peace of mind. It may not be even entirely necessary to have it, but I've never met a widow or a bereaved loved one that declined a $5,000 or $10,000 check, or even more if that's what they ended up having. It always is put to good use. So it's a good idea to buy just to play it safe. So let's talk about who buys life insurance for parents. So you're going to see some kind of similarities between why as well as who, but I want to give you a frame of reference for people like you in your situation. So again, you know that you're not alone, and there's other people that have done what you've thought about doing a multitude of times, thousands of times. So these are the types of situations individuals are in that purchase a life insurance policy for the parents. So number one reason would be worried about assuming final expenses of parent upon passing. So we mentioned the mortgage. Perhaps you don't want to assume paying the debt. If there's other debt that's out there, perhaps you don't want to pay that off. Maybe there's a car loan, that kind of thing. Or maybe you're worried that you may have to, maybe you've co-signed on a loan with your parent. These are things that you want to have a policy in place to cover in case that obligation rolls up to you. Another reason, and this is a really, really important consideration, is that perhaps you're worried about splitting final expenses between siblings would cause drama. I can't tell you how often a parent has passed away suddenly without, foresight, as death typically is. And the siblings have to come up with money that invariably they do not have to pay for a very expensive funeral. And many times what happens, you'd like to think, well, my parents or my brothers and sisters are in good terms. We all love each other and agree, and we'll split everything and it'll be great. Well, the thing you can't take an account for is the personal financial situation that your brother or sisters are in. What if they're in a bind? They don't expect it to come presently right now. Life changes. And maybe they can't come up with $3,000 and they just can't do it. And now you've got to come up, instead of with $3,000 each, you have to come up with $5,000 each. Maybe now that changes to where your other sibling can't do it, or they're much more upset about it. And then that angst and anger grows in both of you for that one sibling that won't do their duty and obligation to take care of mom or dad's funeral. You don't want to go down this route, okay? I've seen it time and time again where money issues like this destroys and tears apart family. It doesn't have to be that way. And for a small premium, you can ensure that it doesn't have to. You can ensure that you don't ruin your relationship, or you don't ruin it, that just because how life happens, the relationship isn't put under intense pressure. That's a great reason to own life insurance, to make sure those obligations are protected so loved ones don't have to come out of pocket to pay it, and then fights and drama ensues. Another reason is that cash death benefit may be a better way to solve estate disagreements between family members. So I actually had this presented to me the other day, and I thought it was a very fine reason to own life insurance. So I met with an 83-year-old grandmother. She lived humbly, had a fixed income, but she had a large tract of land in rural Georgia. She had owned the land for a long time. It was probably about 200 acres. But the problem is that all of her kids felt, and she felt based on her interactions with her children, that all the children had a stake, or it felt like they had a stake in her estate. The problem was, in this tract of land, her son lived there, had a trailer, they lived there, basically took care of things. And she recognized that it's actually really difficult to sell land. You may have, and then on top of that, the value of the land ends up being a lot less if you have to sell it immediately upon passing. So her conclusion was that the grandson was interested in taking his portion too. But she didn't want to put strife between the son and the grandson, her son and her grandson, to negotiate who takes what and what part of the tract is owed to who. So she felt it was a much better use of her time to take out a life insurance plan that would pay the grandson a certain sum of money that would be his estate, that would be the legacy she would leave him. And then in return, let the son assume the ownership of the tract of land so that there wouldn't be this separation or this disagreement or what would potentially turn into a big familial conflict. So in her wisdom, the policy became the solution. Let the grandson have the cash, and with the understanding that he has no ownership in that tract of land or that asset. So you can take this to any sort of relational conclusion. Let's say you have a mom, your mom lives in a house, and you have siblings, and perhaps there's somebody that lives in that house. Maybe it's yourself, maybe it's a sibling. And there's a disagreement as to how the house is going to be split. Is it going to be split three-way? We're going to sell the house. We're going to have arguments over who gets what. Maybe it's a better idea to take a life insurance policy out on mom and then leave that cash benefit to the other sibling as the consolation part of the deal. They get the cash and then you get the house, or whatever the agreement is. But you can see how a life insurance policy can solve these estate considerations where there may be disagreements. In some ways, it's a lot easier to get a lump sum immediately than sit and put a house on the market and wait indefinitely. It can take years in some circumstances, especially if it's a bad market. And you may not get what you think it's worth today. So there's a definite reason. These are definite situations that people buy life insurance for the parents because it helps solve these kind of real familial problems and really removes, I think, just as important, if not more important, the risk of losing a relationship with somebody you love. So let's talk about some of the issues with buying life insurance for parents. In this particular training video, the reason I'm giving you this is I want to give you the pros and the cons and the foreseeable problems that may come up that I've experienced as an insurance agent helping people like yourself get insurance on their parents. So there's a couple circumstances you need to be prepared for. We're going to go into a deep dive and description on how we can better prepare to get around these issues. The first issue is consent. The second issue is pride in the parent. The third is qualification. You really need to make sure all of these particular circumstances are wrapped up before you really seriously pursue getting coverage on your parent for life insurance. Without this, you may be excited with the deal, but then you go back and you find out mom's not signing that contract. You might find out that it doesn't work out. What you think you're going to get is completely different because you haven't taken the steps prior to doing it. So let's go into detail about all three of these issues so you can better understand what your options are. So the first concern is consent and HIPAA law. So even though you're purchasing the life insurance policy for your parent, the law requires consent from the insured. So your records that you have as an individual, health records, are private. HIPAA rules say that individual health matters are completely, explicitly private and must have the authorization of the insured in order to run medical records to apply for coverage. So when you apply for a life insurance policy on yourself or on your parent, you can certainly make the payments. However, in order for an insurance company to medically approve somebody, they have to have access to health records. And if you don't have if your parent doesn't authorize access to the medical records, then it's just not going to happen. You won't be eligible to even apply beyond just sending the paperwork in. So you've got to get their buy-in when it comes to getting a policy on them. The only exception to that is if you have power of attorney. So if you have power of attorney, there are some plans that have what's called guaranteed acceptance life insurance plans, and you're able to take a policy out. Now, there's some restrictions on that. Generally speaking, it's a 2-year waiting period policy, even if they're otherwise healthy, and you need to provide power of attorney paperwork to prove that. Now, so it's not the best case scenario, but that's one way around it. But ultimately, you really need to get with your parent, let them know what you're going to do and why you're going to do that. We're going to cover how to set up the why you're going to do it aspect to make it an easier process. But that's really the preferred method. Now, can you take out coverage on your parent without knowing? No. It goes back to the HIPAA rules. So you're in a situation where, hey, look, if you do this, you're essentially committing fraud, right? Because if you forge their signature, it's even though you're related to them, you're forging their signature, and they never authorized a medical record access. What if my parent is not close by to sign off on the policy? Let's say your parent lives in Pennsylvania, you live in North Carolina. That's totally fine. Most of the policies nowadays can be completed telephonically over the phone or through the mail even, or over email. So all methods are possible because an agent isn't required to be face-to-face with the client anymore. So another aspect here may be wondering was maybe you've got a life insurance plan yourself and you're thinking, why can't I just put my parent on the life insurance policy like part of your employee insurance coverage, or if you've got like family policy? The short answer is no. Same reason for why you can't take out a policy without their consent. HIPAA explanation is the reason why. It's just against the law. And same goes with employee-based life insurance programs too. Those are usually relegated to immediate family members. So if you work somewhere, your spouse can get coverage, your beneficiary, your dependents like your children can get coverage. So the bottom line is, as long as the parent consents to the policy, or if you have power of attorney, there are life insurance and burial insurance coverage options available. So here's the second concern. Now, again, these are interesting topics. I don't see a lot of agents necessarily talking about this, so I think this is really important. It's not just enough to say, yes, I want to pay for a policy for my mom or dad. You've got to anticipate that there's going to be some kind of resistance on behalf of the parent. I mean, let's face it. Your parent has lived a long time. They've been independent for most of their life, and they may feel a bit prideful that they can't take care of this particular matter. And so you've got to be prepared to anticipate this, as well as how to work around some of the most common pride-related elements here. So many parents don't want their children paying for their financial obligations ahead of time. I mean, decent people feel responsible for their own situation in life. We don't want to be leaning on others permanently. And there's a sense of pride that comes from independent living. And many people who are older have that sense more so, especially as they get older, but also because they come from that generation where they did pull themselves up by the bootstraps. They did take care of themselves. And they didn't ask anybody for any help. And they sure won't do it when it comes to something like this. So, this is something to have, important to have that discussion with your parent prior to buying life insurance. So the goal is to make sure they understand your reason why you want to buy life insurance on them, and really to get to the core of it, to express your concerns and make completely sure that they understand that this is not an attempt to profit from their passing. Some people feel that you're trying to take advantage of them and their death to try to enrich yourself, and that will turn off a lot of people, or a lot of parents that would otherwise be okay with it. So you want to make sure you really explain to the parent why you're buying life insurance coverage. And again, the main reason comes down to usually there's some sort of financial obligation you're personally worried about handling. And it's important to have a very frank conversation. You want to tell them if it's a burial concern, that they don't have the money, or you're afraid they may not in later times. And you're also concerned that, that bill will pass to us. And then added to that, if there's no coverage there, that there may be drama caused from siblings, from brothers and sisters, trying to figure out who's going to pay for what. And that because if this plan isn't there, it may be of the circumstance to where it causes irreconcilable strife between the people you love, to the point where it causes permanent damage to the family. And if you present this to your mom or dad this way, it really gets them thinking about the impact of taking a little tiny policy out like this, and how it's really more than just money. It's really a way to ensure peace of mind, not just to take care of final expenses, but to make sure relations between the kids they raise all their lives is maintained even after their death. Because again, can't stress it enough, maybe you've seen it personally, death of parents can cause significant family strife, and a policy is a great way to avoid it. Remember, they ultimately must personally consent to the life insurance product. So again, this is why you want to take the time to explain this to them so they know what to expect, and really get them to understand why you feel the way you do and why you want to help out with a policy like this. Okay, so the third concern is just actually qualifying your parent for life insurance. So, you got to make sure they can be bought into it. There could be a good reason they're sold on why they need a life insurance policy, but you got to make sure that they're going to be qualified for the actual product. So, as a broker myself, I can tell you that health, to an extent, does matter. There are insurance products out there that will cover regardless of the health situation. So, but it's that will affect the quality of the coverage that you get, right? So, you want to know what their health is, not down to the actual, A, B, and C, super detailed. That can come later. But you need to have a good idea where they stand on their health as a way to help me, if you work with me, give you an accurate representation of what the price is going to be and how the coverage is going to work. Now, age is actually a little bit more important to consider than health. If you've got a parent that's over 90, there's no life insurance options anymore above 90. If your parent's between 50 and 90, there's plenty of options. So as long as they fall in that age range, regardless of health, there are options out there. And most likely understand there is going to be some basic health questions that they do have to answer, especially if you want the better quality life insurance options out there. It's nothing where there's a detailed medical examination necessarily required, but it is something that you'll find is going to be part and parcel of the program. Health questions are normal. It is life insurance after all. So more questions to ask ahead of time before buying life insurance for your parents. So first of all, who is paying? I've basically implied here that you will pay this particular plan The parent can pay it. If you wanted to give them the money to pay it, that works fine. The payer, as long as it's a loved one, a sibling, a parent, doesn't matter. The insurance company doesn't really care as long as there is a familial relationship. And the next question you got to ask yourself is, how much do you need? That's going to come down to what financial obligations do you want covered. You're going to need less if it's just a basic cremation than you would if you needed a burial. If there's other larger obligations, then obviously you're going to need a larger policy. So think in advance what your goals are, what do you want covered, what expenses are there, and come up with a rough estimate of what you think is absolutely necessary. Who do you want the beneficiaries to be? Again, this is ultimately legally a decision by the owner of the policy, which usually tends being the insured. You can actually set this up to be where the owner of the policy would be you if you wanted control over this beneficiary setup. But who do you want to have the money to pay for whatever obligations? That's something you have to talk to your parent about and see what their opinions are. Does your parent have to take an exam? I mentioned a moment ago, most likely not. Most of what we do is what's called simplified issue, where we look at basic health history, we access medical records, prescription records to determine insurability, and usually there's no examination or physical involved, so it makes the process very easy. And so you may be wondering, well, okay, so what is the best life insurance for my parents? And I'm going to give you a brief explanation here of what the options are. I'll tell you my opinion here momentarily, but you've got term insurance, whole life, and guaranteed acceptance. Basically, term insurance lasts for a period of time before terminating. That's where term gets its name, term terminating. Sometimes the rates go up through the roof, but usually term insurance is designed to be outlived. It's not designed for permanent protection like whole life. Whole life insurance, the rates never go up, the coverage never goes down. As long as you continue your premiums, you have your coverage. And many times we can get full coverage started from the first day. And that's permanent protection. People don't know when they're going to die, so if you need to make sure a certain lump sum is going to be available, whole life is sensible. And lastly here, guaranteed acceptance. Guaranteed acceptance is what we do when nothing else works. When somebody's health is so bad that we have to do a no questions asked policy, otherwise known as a guaranteed acceptance life insurance plan. The big limitation with this is there's no natural death coverage for the first 2 years of the policy. Beyond that, you're fully covered, but it's a last-ditch effort when nothing else works, and people take it because there is no other option. So when you have to have something, this is the option to pick. So how to qualify your parent for life insurance? Let's talk about that a little bit. So you've got some different options. It's likely your mom and dad are getting constant advertisements on TV between watching Westerns and The Price is Right and the junk mail that they get for life insurance. This typically is the most expensive and worst value options that are out there, so I usually implore you to just avoid that. Again, put that down on the list. Try to get another option first because there's rate increases with these plans, and sometimes they just force a waiting period. So even if you have a parent in good health, they make them wait 2 years. And many of them, like I described earlier, cancel at 80. If you remember earlier on, I talked about a client I talked to yesterday whose mom had one of these plans that canceled outright at 80. And she was in big trouble because they had to figure out how to do life insurance after that. Now, you also can work with what's called captive agents. Now, captive agent specializes in life insurance, but they only represent one company. Usually the company is more expensive, and they can't shop for the best combo of price and coverage. So if there's health issues, they may put you in a worser plan than what you could find through an independent agent, like me. I'm what's known as a broker. I work with multiple companies, depending on the state, 10 to 15, and I just take the applicant's information, talk to my companies, and figure out which one's going to offer you the best price and coverage. They're all high-quality coverage. It matches whatever your particular goals are, and then we just figure out who's going to give you the best deal. So that way you maximize the amount of coverage you can for whatever premium you're comfortable paying. So it just gives you the best bang for your buck. And I think, especially dealing with your parents, who usually are well into their 50s, 60s, and beyond, may have had some health problems. And when you start applying for normal life insurance companies with a history of health problems, even minor ones like blood pressure, cholesterol, it can make the price be much higher than you would ever anticipate. Whereas a broker can take that information and see who's going to give you the best deal. It, most of the time, many times, ends up being the best deal for the consumer. So let's talk about life insurance for parents quote. So I'm going to actually show you some examples of life insurance quotes. We're going to look at a 65, 75, and 85-year-old quote for $10,000 in coverage. I'm presuming this is just a basic burial plan. We can do higher, we can do lower, we can do way higher. So, this is just, the idea behind this is just to give you some sample numbers and quotes. To give a personal quote is dependent on your age and your health, what prescriptions you take, how much coverage you get. Obviously, you can see that takes a lot of work, and personalized by definition is unique to you. So the concept here is just to give you a rough estimate of what to expect, and at least give you an idea of, okay, 10,000, I'm close to 65, not quite, but at least I know what this is going to run for. So let's take a look. Okay, so what you're looking at on the screen here is just a sample selection of different life insurance companies that are available, as well as their corresponding monthly premium. Again, this is for a 65-year-old male who is for $10,000 in coverage. So again, which one would you qualify for? Totally unique to you, but you're seeing a range of between upper 40s to mid 50s. For a female who is age 65, for $10,000 in coverage at level rates, you're looking at between upper 30s to mid 40s, depending on your health. A male age 75 for $10,000 in level coverage can expect to have somewhere in a range of between mid 80s to right around $100 a month for $10,000 in coverage. Females, non-smoker rates, $10,000 is going to be between mid 60s to mid 70s for $10,000. And males age 85 for $10,000 in coverage for level coverage is roughly going to be 170 range to 230 range, depending on what the person can actually qualify for regarding level coverage. And last but not least, females age 85 for $10,000 in coverage are going to range between 120s to 170s, again, depending on health, non-smoking, and level coverage. So those are just some quick sample rates for $10,000 in non-smoking rates for 65, 75, and 85-year-old males and females. Again, just wanted to give you an idea of what the level coverage would run for. Your prices are totally unique to you, but hopefully you can kind of see what to expect. And hey, if you want more, you can do more. If you want less, you can do less too. So let's talk about the process of qualifying your parents for life insurance. So after you've figured out a rough estimate of your budget and what you'd like a life insurance policy to accomplish for your parent, here are the next steps. So first, get buy-in from your parent. Explain to them face-to-face, if at all possible, why you're doing this, why it's important, and what the consequences are if you do not do it. Nobody can make the case better than yourself. Explain to them the concerns that you have, the fear that you have if this isn't in place, and what the consequences could be for you personally, financially, and the relationship between your siblings. This is the best way to get them to drop the pride, if they have any, and buy into what it is that you're suggesting. Once you do that, go ahead and contact me. Once your parents are on board, talk to me, call me up, 888-626-0439, or send me a message. And then what I can do is actually just ask you some basic health questions about them, just to get a feel for where they're at. Ultimately, I am going to have to talk to them, and then give you an idea of what the parent can qualify for. And then as long as it is, assuming you're the payor and it's set up the way you want, at the next step, I would contact the parent and have them complete an interview with me, and then submit an application on their behalf, and then set up payment with you upon approval. And that's it. No examinations, no unnecessary physicals. As long as everything turns out okay, then you get approved, and you now have the peace of mind knowing that those fears that you have are taken care of. So let's talk about final steps. Let's say you've gotten to the conclusion of this video and you feel strongly that getting a policy is really important, and you want to take care of it and take the steps I recommended. If you're interested in doing that and you're ready to talk to me, you can do one of two things. You can go to my website. It's buylifeinsuranceforburial.com. You can send me a message clicking the contact box at the top of the page, or if you go to the bottom, there's a little pop-up box. You can send a message that way and just ask me for a free quote. Give me some ideas of what you're looking for. We can start, if you prefer, to conversate via email, eventually leading to a phone call. Or if you just want to cut to the chase and see what your options are, call me at 888-626-0439. You'll speak to me live. do leave a voicemail if you don't reach me. I'm very busy all day talking to people like you and helping them and their parents with life insurance. And it takes 5 or 10 minutes to figure out what your parent will qualify for, and then you can decide how you'd like to proceed from there. If it sounds great, we can proceed. If not, no big deal. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, and make sure to subscribe if you like this kind of content. I do lots of videos like this every single week. My name is David Duford at buylifeinsuranceforburial.com, and thank you so much for watching. Take care.